Hello, I am Stacy. Hello, I am State Senator Donzella James from the great state of Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, USA. And I want to give you warm greetings from our Georgia legislature as well as the great city of Atlanta, Georgia. It's unfortunate that I can't be there in person to greet all of you because I wanted to be there to congratulate each and every one of the awardees who will be receiving Person of the Year awards from the African Leadership magazine. You are doing a fantastic job in your areas of concern, and I am very proud and honored to speak with you today. I'm particularly happy to thank the CEOs who will be honored today, as well as all the other recipients. You must understand that the Africa of our dreams lies within reach, and only a sustained effort from each and every one of us Hello?
Dominion International.
Hello? I am Hello? I am State Senator.
Earlier today, I took a walk in a quiet place. In this quiet place, I found an old lady seated. And I went and I sat next to her. I didn't greet her. I started humming and thinking my own thoughts. "Young girl," the lady said, "where are you from?" I was nonplussed. Why would an old lady ask me where I'm from? She said to me, "Young girl, I don't know where you are from, but here we're in Africa. And in Africa, we do not enter a space without acknowledging the people in that space." On that note, I acknowledge the following. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A special welcome to all. Dignitaries, Your Excellencies, Minister Ayanda Dlodlo, Mayor of Johannesburg, Herman Mashaba, Senator Donzella James, Senator representing Metropolitan Atlanta, all the way from Georgia, joining us on video, Executive Mayor of the Midvaal Municipality, Executive Mayor of Dipalesing Municipality, members of the diplomatic community. Welcome to the following embassies who are gracing our presence: the Embassy of my motherland, Tanzania, the Embassy of my birthland, Zambia, the Embassy of Mauritius, Libya, Cameroon, where friends and family are from, the Embassy of the Democratic Republic of Congo, on my plans to go and visit this year, the Embassy of the Republic of Senegal. When am I going there? Embassy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. To our host, the African Leadership Magazine, UK, and its partner in South Africa and Middle East, Training and Excellence. To the esteemed special guests of honor, our very cerebral African Persons of the Year business leaders, members of the Fourth Estate of the Realm, the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is an honor to stand here. My name is Rehema Issa. And to calm myself down and to get away from speaking in a very stoic way, I always say, I am an African, born of Tanzanian parents, in Zambia, grew up in Botswana, living in South Africa, married to a South African who's half Ugandan, grew up in Kenya and in Ethiopia, with kids who consider themselves completely South African. Here we are today talking about African leadership management and talking about the leadership that is going to chart the way for the continent, the leadership that is taking strides to recognize that we are in different times. And now is a time for us to have a different type of leadership, a leadership that is taking Africa forward. We live in exciting times. And shortly, we will just have a video playing about the African Leadership Magazine and Send a Girl Child. And after that video, I will introduce our first guest. Welcome once again. those that have come before us and those who are taught in amazing ways. And she said to me, and dear child, what are you going to do there? And I said to her, Mama, I'm supposed to stand on stage. She chuckled as old ladies do. And do what, little girl? And I said, well, I'm supposed to talk to people and tell them what's coming up. And she says, in this day and age, can't they read? And I said to her, Mama, we tend to gather in these places, and we tend to want to introduce people to give a life and soul. So she said to me, well, let's pretend I'm there. Tell me, what are you going to tell these people? And so began an interesting day. I said to her, Mama, first up, we have Mr. Kingsley Okeke. And she said, and child, what do you know about this Kingsley? I said, Mama, absolutely nothing. What are you going to say about him? I said to her, Mama, I can only say what I know. And after having met him for a few minutes and a few moments and spending time looking at his biography, I can tell you he's passionate about African leadership. I can tell you he's passionate about charting a future for this continent. And she asked me, and why is he passionate about this? And I said, well, Mama, in my discussion with him, one of the things he said stuck in my mind. What did he say, child? She said. And I said, Mama, he's got 3 children. And one of the things he thinks about is not about leadership today, but the leadership that his children will need. And that's what he focuses on. As a CEO of African Leadership Magazine and a person in the media space, constantly shaping what other people are thinking about. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kingsley Okeke.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start, let me just very quickly, I've met Rahama for just about 3 or 4 hours, but it looks as if I've known her all my life. Again, I greet you. Permit me to stand on the existing protocol because I don't want to go over it again. My name is Kingsley Okeke, the managing editor of African Leadership Magazine. And I bring you greetings from the board and management of the magazine all the way from the UK. And we are here today to celebrate Africa, to celebrate excellence. And a couple of people have asked us in the past, why do we celebrate the positives? Why do we celebrate the good over the tried headline of hunger, war, and famine, which is also equally prevalent in the continent? And our answer is quite obvious. We have far too many media organizations all over the world promoting the tried headline of hunger, war, and famine. But we know, you and I know, that seated here and even beyond this place are Africans that are doing great things. And if we do not tell their stories, if we do not celebrate them, who would? Africa, the continent that we deserve, or the continent that we would want to have, is within reach. But it is only committed leadership that can get us to where we're going to. Today we're taking, or this year, which is the 7th edition, we're taking a slight departure from what we've been known to do. Last time we had an interface or interplay of politics, business, diplomacy. This year, we're doing an interplay of business, politics, security, and diplomacy. Some people would ask, why do you need security? Because we believe that security is the precursor for investment. It is the precursor for any sustainable economic development that we want in the continent. So we have decided to include security as a cardinal part of this year, but much more importantly is business. Because we know that growing or creating job and spreading wealth it's no longer a business venture. It has become a patriotic duty. We know that at the rate that the numbers are growing in the continent, at the rate that we are going in terms of, there's a projection that by the year 2050, our population would have doubled. And we are not creating jobs that is commensurate to this population growth. And that is a challenge. That is a problem. So if we must create the continent that we deserve, it means we must encourage business leaders wherever they may be, no matter how little they may be contributing, wherever they may be, we must showcase them to the world and bring them together with policymakers, bring them together with other business leaders so that they can form a partnership. Just last year, we started a journey towards a major growth in the continent with the signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in Kigali, which means that as of today, just about 22 countries have signed onto it and 19 have ratified. It means that we have an opportunity, an amazing opportunity in our hands to take the continent to the next level. But this cannot be done if we are separated by distance, if we are separated by boundaries, if we are separated by tongues and tribe. It can only be done when we pool our resources together, when we cooperate as business leaders wherever we may be, to ensure that the continent gets to where it is. The journey has started, and we will not stop there. The story, there's still so much to be done. We just showed you a video. We have started our part. We believe that beyond celebrating excellence, beyond bringing people together, education will play a key role in whatever we want to do. So we are not only pleading, we have begun the work. Every year, we take about 10 to 15 young students from across the continent, pay their tuition from primary school to the university. Because we believe that if we must preach leadership, it has to be with quality education. Because, like they say, education is the leveler. And if we have much more people educated, it means that much more people would have a level playing ground to create the kind of future they desire. So I urge you today, seated here, that we have the solution to our problems. Our statement is resounding. Africa can solve its problems. Africa can do it, and we must do it together. So once again, I thank you, and I bring you all the warmest greetings from most of our board members who couldn't join us here, but who are here with us in spirit. And we are hopeful that this will not be the last meeting that we'll be having. We're going to be continuing the conversation on all our platforms, on our magazine, on our social media platforms. And please feel free before you leave to meet someone, exchange cards, and make this continent a smaller place and a better place. Thank you very much.
You can see who doesn't wear long dresses a lot, hey? Every time I come up, I seem to be stumbling. So there I was talking to the old lady, and she said to me, "Who's coming up next?" And I said to her, "Mama, you won't believe this." And she said, "Child, I've lived for a very long time. It's highly unlikely you're going to say anything to me that I've not heard before." And I said, "Well, the next person who's coming up is somebody who I really looked up to growing up." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "Well, you really got to understand. Growing up, finding images that were black like me, and finding hair care products that actually could work." And she looked at me and she goes, "You, hair care? Seriously?" And I said, "Well, yeah, my hair journey was really defined by this person." And she said, "But why are you talking about hair, Rehema? Like, seriously?" I said, "Well, the truth is that in this journey and making the story of what Africa is, we've got to understand that people don't just appear amongst us in a particular space. They've walked a journey. They've earned their stripes. They come from somewhere. And that somewhere has defined a lot of people and has touched a lot of people. Now he's dabbling in politics, and he's in the Democratic Alliance, the executive mayor of Johannesburg, Mr. Herman Mashaba."
Program Director, thank you very much for such warm introduction. Mr. Okeke, the Managing Editor of African Leadership Magazine. Excellencies from all over the world, particularly from Africa, fellow South Africans. Welcome to the city of Johannesburg, the city of gold, the city of just over 5 million residents, the city that I lead in a multi-party arrangement, the party in government that made history in South Africa just under 3 years ago, when I was put into government to lead this economic hub, not just of South Africa, but of the entire African continent, in a multi-party arrangement. But at the same time, it's a city of contradictions. It's a city attracting 3,000 people every single month coming to look for this royal gold that this city in 1886 was built upon. But unfortunately, as they arrive in the city, they're surprised to find a city that they never imagined. It's a city, 1 in 3 of its residents are unemployed today, as I'm talking to you. It's a city with over 300,000 housing backlog, particularly affordable accommodation for our people. It's a city here in the heart of the economy of this country, and if not the continent. But I can assure you, 20 kilometers any side of the city, I can take you to communities that don't have ablution facilities. That is why I say it's a city of contradiction. But it's a city full of potential, full of possibilities. And the residents of the city in August 2016 gave me the responsibility to turn the city around. And I've always believed the only way one can actually do, and I think that's something that I'd like to really urge. When I was invited to African leadership function, I thought, let me take advantage of talking to my African brothers, sisters, mothers, uncles, to say, how do we, all of us, one day, all of us can be real proud Africans. I know we are proud. That is why 34 years ago, I conceived an idea in the midst of apartheid. I conceived an idea, and I called that idea Black Like Me, to demonstrate how proud I am of myself and my people and my community. And in the process, I was fortunately handsomely rewarded. My wife and I, in a few days' time, in a month's time, will be celebrating 37 years of our marriage. So this gives you a sense. This gives you a sense that I'm not a young man, but I remember very well, not long ago, I was a young man, a capitalist, a real serious capitalist, because capitalism is in my blood. Never thought one day I will stand in front of an audience like this as a public servant. I took up this responsibility to ensure that we can turn this country around, because I strongly believe when Johannesburg works, South Africa will work. And the day when South Africa begins to work, I can assure you the entire African continent is going to work. And the day when the entire African continent begins to work, the world is going to be a safe place. Because I find it difficult, it hurts me every day when I see our people. I see our people in dangers, looking at ways to get out of this rich continent, the best continent in the world, in all aspects. The only thing Africa requires is leadership. So, Mr. Okeke, I believe and really hope, and I will pray that this magazine can play the role in encouraging real African leadership. And our African leadership has to really be based on fundamentals of ensuring that we create the rule of law in our countries. Because the rule of law, as far as I'm concerned, is a prerequisite for developing our communities and our countries. And we need democratic principles and democratic governments. We need free media, robust one for that matter, that is brutal, but at the same time fair. We need to encourage our people to take education seriously. Because without educating our people, we are doomed to fail. The world is today talking about us. I actually read one article this morning on social media about Africa still having the youngest generation in the world. When the entire world is getting old, Africa is getting younger. But the economy is not driven just by human bodies. The economy in the country is built by human bodies, but unfortunately, they need to be coupled by strong education. We can work hard, but working hard alone is not sufficient enough. We need good education, and that's something that I think as Africa, let us start investing in education of our youth. But I think for me also what's more important is to strive on building strong families. I think if you look at successful nations all over the world since the beginning of mankind, without Africa developing strong families, we stand little chance of ever making it and compete with the world and be a proud continent one day. What are the chances of it happening in my lifetime? Unfortunately, I don't have much time left. I'm nearer to the grave than actually seeing this continent to be the continent I wish to have one day. But I believe I have the responsibility to lay the foundation, to be the generation that's laying the foundation, not for my children, for my grandchildren. The reason why I'm saying it not for myself and my children, for my grandchildren, because I'm a strong believer in long-term planning. I'm a very strong believer in the future. And because I grew up in an environment where, because of the environment at the time, taking shortcuts was the order of the day. That was the only way we could survive. I think for some of you who've read my book about my life, I took a gamble, refused P.W. Botha to determine my destiny. But the only way I could defy him was to live like a criminal. Because at the time, 40 years ago, 37 years ago in this country, for me as a black South African, to be able to move around, I needed to carry a reference book that I must carry on a 24-hour basis. Because I had police stopping us, restricting our movement, designing where we should live and work. And I decided P.W. Botha and the apartheid government is not going to determine my destiny. So I lived a life under the apartheid world as a criminal, because I did not have a white employer signing my reference book every month that I was allowed to be in whatever particular area. So we lived that life of what we actually called in the townships at the time called double up. Double up, it means shortcuts. That was the only way we could survive. But today I live 25 years later. I live in a democratic, constitutional democracy that I'm actually quite proud to have lived to see it in my lifetime. But these democratic principles and the democracy that we've attained in South Africa is something that I wish to see it happening throughout the African continent. And I know it is going to happen. No one is going to stop this wind of change, of bringing democratic governments throughout our continent. No one is going to stop the youth, future youth of this African continent, to make sure that one day they can say, the people in this room on this particular Friday night sat and discussed this particular matter of our future. So thank you very much for coming to the city of Johannesburg, blessing us with your presence, coming to discuss the future of my grandchildren and your children. We appreciate that you don't take things for granted on a Friday night to be here, taking our continent and my city and my country seriously. So thanks very much to African Leadership Magazine for the work that you are currently doing, the work that we expect you to actually accelerate, because we don't have time on our side. So thank you very much to everyone for being here. I've met some of the ambassadors that I've engaged in the past, and I'm really glad that I will be hosting the African Diplomatic Corps in my offices next Thursday. So some of you, next week, Thursday, this time, I'm going to be dining with you, giving you the insights of our city, the challenges we inherited. But it's not just really about the challenges that we inherited, it's what we are doing about it. Because that's the reason why people voted us into office, is to solve these problems. People voted for the change because they want a change. And I'm going to be sharing this with you, and I'm really looking forward to hosting you. And I'm glad that today I'm being hosted by the African Leadership Magazine. Thank you very much, and enjoy the evening.
And I stand here and wonder, and I think to myself, do you hear that, Mama? Do you hear where we call home, Johannesburg, welcoming people to this place? And she said to me, my child, I hear you, but what are you there to do? And I said to her, Mama, we're here to talk about Africa's future in an interconnected world. And she says, an interconnected world? Whatever do you mean? And I got excited because I said, Mama, let me tell you what happened yesterday, literally yesterday. She said, go ahead. We've got all day, it seems. I said, Mama, yesterday I went into a meeting, and it was a meeting with some very important people, the World Bank and different organizations. And she said, what happened? I said, well, there was a person, a lady, that she was standing on the stage and she was speaking, and they introduced her, and she was a very important person. And she said, and so? Well, Mama, when they said her name, I remembered my high school friend. And she said, tell me more. And I said, well, they said her name was Mary. And so I texted my friend in Botswana, and I said, Grace, was Sizo's sister's name Mary? And she said, yes. And I thought, oh my goodness, Mary's standing in front of me. But I didn't have Sizo's number. So I texted Alphonse in Dubai, and Alphonse gave me Sizo's number in Australia. And within 3 minutes of identifying Mary on the stage, I was talking to a long-lost friend who I last chatted to 20 years ago. True story. Mama, I said, we are interconnected. We are able to tap into everybody at the flash of the hand. We are able to meet people that we haven't seen in a long time. We're able to connect with people that we never knew and imagined would be standing in the same room. And through a phone or a digital device, we're able to connect to people and tell them of our dreams, our aspirations, our direction. We're able to engage them in our story. And she said to me, and what's the power in that? And I said, Mama, when we start to hear each other's story, Mama, we can start to tell people about the direction of where Africa is going. She said to me, tell me more. And I said, Mama, we are so connected that let me tell you about the next person we have speaking. The next person we have speaking, I met last year. And I met her because she came to speak at my TEDx event. And at my TEDx event, she shared her story, not just with the women in the room, but in a few days, she's sharing her story with the entire world. That is the power of interconnectedness. That is the power of having platforms where we can tell our story. Hawa Shafare, who will be speaking today on behalf of Dr. Joe Beasley, Chair of the African Leadership Advisory Board, is a phenomenal woman. A neurolinguistic practitioner, a trainer, an inspirational speaker, most importantly, a woman with her own story that just backs itself up. We are proud today to announce her as the next speaker, giving us a sense of the interconnectedness of Africa, but importantly, introducing you to why we're here today.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sawubona. Dumelang. Hoe gaan dit? And of course, I would not be South African if I didn't say, how's it? Good evening to everyone and welcome to all our distinguished guests, Your Excellencies. Mayor Mashaba, thank you so much for honoring us. I know my office has been calling you non-stop, and I thank you for accepting our honor here today. We are humbled, and we are also honored at the same time. Ambassadors from many countries, as you've heard earlier, our distinguished honorees, our invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, my friends and colleagues who supported Training Excellence and supported the African Leadership Magazine for the last 7 years in running and 4 years going in South Africa as a whole. And I'm proud to say that as a South African, we're hosting the African Leadership Magazine in South Africa, in Johannesburg, for the last 4 years. So ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for all of you who's sponsored and worked with us over this period of time. Thank you very much. Mayor Mashaba, you've said a story about yourself and in terms of your passion in Johannesburg. And I must tell you, almost about 8 years ago, I started losing hope. I started losing hope as a young girl that is coming into that's in South Africa, been brought in, and those of you from Lens, the Lens-Os, we know as the Lens-Os, been brought up in a home with 13 children, 2-bedroom home, 13 of us, and growing up in an environment which at that time I thought was not good. But when I look back to that time, I now realize that what you spoke about of interconnectedness and where we come from, for me, that was the beginning of a wholesome truth of where I was heading in this world. Johannesburg, or Lenasia at that time, was just the beginning of where I was actually going. And of course, I needed to go through many challenges. So those of you who know me, and thank you, Rahima, for introducing that, will know that I've had many challenges. Yes, both on a personal level, but also on the business level. But I tell you that today I stand here to talk to you as a business leader because we're here to celebrate the Business Leader Excellence Awards, particularly the Persons of the Year's Awards. And if I look at where I actually came from, being the 13th, by the way, baby of 13 children, and been brought up in a 2-bedroom home. And I say something that's very personal to me, but many of you know this, is that I'm a baby of a mum who's the second wife to my dad. So in other words, my dad had two wives, and we all grew up in the same home. So ladies, how many of us can actually do that today? Gents, I know you're nudging your wives right now saying, you see, we should have actually had another wife, and you see, you would have been very happy. But this is the interconnectedness that we have in Africa. And we have it all over the world. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when I found that things in Africa wasn't just working for me, and not because of the country, not because of where we were in terms of politics, but rather because of my own personal journey that I was going through. It was at that time that I just lost my last son out of my 3 children that I had lost. And I then decided that I needed to be more connected with the rest of the world. And of course, this is how I also met many people that are in this room here who especially flown out from Dubai, UAE. Mr. Ahmed, who is joining us in the room, specially flown out. Mr. Zafar from Pakistan, and a few others that are here this evening. I met you through that journey that I made 7 years ago, and that's the interconnectedness that we have. It's something that I speak about, which we call, and some of you in the room will understand the term synchronicity. Synchronicity is a connectedness that we have with each other in this world, together with the connectedness that we actually have with each other outside this world without us even realizing it. Right now, the reason that you are all sitting in this room, possibly next to the person next to you, there's a reason for it. And it's because the universe has actually allowed you this particular moment in time. Perhaps maybe 2 weeks ago, you did not even know that you were going to be here. Africa is that one particular moment in our life, in this particular continent, that we are connected completely with the rest of the world. Yes, we might be looked down upon by many countries out there that actually says, oh, well, Africa is right down there at the bottom. But I have to tell you that in all my travels that I do all over the world, through Africa, through UAE, and now in March, I'll be representing women at the UN conference in USA. Everywhere I go, the respect we have as South Africans, and I think, ladies and gents, this we need a round of applause for, is that everywhere I go, including, for example, Dubai, and they ask me, where are you from? And I said, South Africa. And they ask me, no, truly, where are you from? And I say, South Africa. Or in Arabic, we say, Junubi Africa. And immediately, the respect just comes out. You're from South Africa? And the first name that comes out is Mandela. The next name that comes out is, sure, I've lost it. One of our Islamic scholars who actually comes out. And I actually look at them and I said, yes, how do you know that? Right, I heard the name, somebody said it. Ahmad Deedat, alhamdulillah, thank you. See, in front of you, I just lost that name. And yes, we are well known throughout the whole of this world as part of Africans. So, Rahima, that interconnectedness that you actually talk about is there forever. I just want to share with you, before I give you the speech from our advisory board, Dr. Joe Beasley, I want to also tell you that through my experience in training, in development, and traveling the world and speaking of women empowerment and women leadership, one of the core areas that both our mayor spoke about and Mr. Kingsley, Dr. Kingsley, you spoke about it earlier, is in education. Every organization I go to, whether it's in Africa, whether it's outside, human capital development has been one of the strongest areas that is allowing us to lack growth and possibility in where we are going. If you had to look, the employee engagement levels in South Africa, let's look at Africa firstly. In Africa, our employee engagement levels are sitting at 13%. Let's guess, what is our employee engagement levels for South Africa? 9%. The rest of the world, we are looking at approximately 20% and above. As if you look at the US, it's sitting at 32.9 at the moment. And I know that last year it was at 32.2. It's now slightly going up. The question is, why is our employee engagement level so low? If we look at Africa particularly, we are not looking at how do we make organizational health a strategic priority. We need to start looking, and the business leaders that are in this room, tomorrow we're going to be having discussions. There is a business breakfast that is taking place as to look at how do we secure and look at our security, how do we look at investments into Africa, because when we start looking at that, we can start looking at how do we change human capital development. And I'm sorry, ladies and gents, but the buck stops with you as an individual. The time has come that we stop the blame process in Africa. We need to stop what I call the naughty table syndrome. Those of you who heard me speak before, the naughty table syndrome. Those of you, and I know in South Africa particularly, if you were a little youngster, toddler, and you were walking around and you were hurting, and you bumped your head and you knocked your head on the corner of a table, how many times mom would want to come to you and make you quiet, and the first thing she'll say, naughty table. Do you remember that? Naughty floor when you fell. And here it is, that's where the blame process starts. We start saying, I walked, I got hurt, and who got blamed? The table, the floor. We get older, and as toddlers, we run around, we play with each other, and we fight. And when mom walks in and says, what's going on? His fault. As we get older, we get into the work environment. Why are you late? Oh, the traffic was heavy. An old one in Johannesburg, yeah? The traffic was heavy. We're constantly blaming others. What are you as an individual sitting in this room, whether you're a business leader, whether you are a politician, whether you are a diplomat, whether you're just a layman in the street, what are you doing individually for Africa and your region in order to make a difference? The little that you can contribute goes a long way. I, for one, have started a very small business from my home center at home. That has now extended into 3 main offices regionally in South Africa, and extending it out to UAE, to Dubai. And then I travel all over the world to be able to go and do training and development. I don't need to have offices in those regions. All I need to do is gain the power of that interconnectedness that we spoke about and find out what my purpose is. I want to end of that by telling you that to find your purpose, you need to first look at what your passion is and then become purposeful. So as business leaders here in the room today, you found your purpose. You're making a commitment. The reason you're here to get your awards is because you have created employment in Africa. You have created jobs. You have created wealth. You are starting to focus and look in other areas where you can gain more experience. So every one of you sitting in this room here today, are we going to stop this process of, in Africa, on the blame process? Are we constantly going to start, his fault? If we continue to do that, we've lost the plot. And employee engagement levels will not go up. We need to start looking at how do we become more purposeful? How do we create organizational health? How do we create a culture in our organizations, in our business? And that starts with you in your home. Create a leadership culture in your home that will then extend outside. And without going on more, I would just like to end off in terms of a very personal thing for me. And that is the day that I lost my last child, was my 3rd child that I've actually lost. Many people came to me and said, how is it that you can still run a business internationally? How is it that you can still be who you are and do what you do? Is because I have learned that through life, I have learned that, and many people tell you that you go through tests. I don't believe they are tests. I believe they are only learning opportunities. The question is, the challenge that you're currently going through in your business, in your careers, in anything that you're going through, is it a test, or are you learning from it as what is the learning opportunity that you need to take and become purposeful in your life? And ladies and gents, from me, that's all I'm going to talk about. I'd now like to talk about the actual speech that I've been called upon to speak. Is a welcome speech by the chairman of African Leadership Advisory Board, Dr. Joe Beasley, on the occasion of the 7th African Leadership Magazine Persons of the Year's Award, CEO's induction ceremony, which is held at the Sandton Convention Center, as you are here today, in South Africa, in Johannesburg, on the 22nd of February. Thank you very much. Greetings from Dr. Joe Beasley, His Excellencies, ambassadors, distinguished honorees, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is always an honor to bring welcome greetings to Africa's finest in business, politics, and diplomacy at our annual Persons of the Year's event. I therefore bring you greetings from the board and management of African Leadership Magazine. I welcome you all to Johannesburg, a city that has fittingly become the host of this annual gathering. South Africa brings me fond memories. I was one of the civil rights leaders who was drafted from the United States by my organization, the Rainbow Push Coalition, headed by Martin Luther King Jr. and Reverend Jesse Jackson, to come down to Johannesburg to help support Nelson Mandela and all too known activities, and was there to see not only his release from prison, but the economic and political conditions of his people to improve. It is therefore worrying to see the country we all fought to liberate struggle to accommodate other Africans who are now living and doing business here. I'm sure this is not the country Nelson Mandela wished to build. Nelson Mandela means so many things to so many people, but above all, he is a symbol of leadership, not just in Africa, but globally. And as we gather here today, we must self-examine and also ask the tough questions that may only be answered by actions. How would the world remember us? How would posterity judge us? While we ponder on these questions and make the tough decisions that would make our societies a better place, we at African Leadership Magazine choose to inspire this kind of commitment to the growth of our communities by recognizing those already making contributions. We must not fail to recognize those Africans that are already leaving footprints in the sand of time. They are our hope. They are our hope in business, our pride in governance, and our future in diplomacy. Their untiring efforts have helped place the continent on the global map. They are at the forefront of balancing the scale, creating jobs, and safeguarding our common heritage. The Persons of the Year's Award was conceived in 2010 in keeping with our tradition of presenting the sides of the continent, which hardly finds placement at the global stage, and celebrating exemplary leadership and individuals who have contributed to shaping the global perception of the African continent. We call them the game changers, who are doing things differently towards repositioning the African continent. And ladies and gentlemen, those game changers are in the room here with you this evening. This gala dinner, which is organized with the support from our knowledge partners, Training Excellence South Africa, the Center for Economic Leadership Development, CELD, an NGO in special consultative status with the United Nations, is becoming at a time when all available report points to growing unemployment numbers and widening inequality gaps. We are confident that seated in this room here today are men and women from the public and private sector who can contribute meaningfully towards reducing the unemployment numbers in the continent. Distinguished honorees, Africa looks up to you. Africa looks up to you to provide the much needed leadership, and this honor today should serve as a tonic. I'm hoping that the certification that you are receiving, the trophies that you are receiving, is not just a symbol that lies on your desk, but it becomes a symbol for you to look at and decide how you're going to regrow and how you're going to develop even further. Our part, we would not waver in our swarm task of telling the undiluted success stories of developmental activities in Africa. It might interest you to note that our publications, which is distributed to the top 5% of key decision makers and circulated at major events around key business capitals around the world, have become an influencer for those seeking to make investment decisions on the continent. African leadership events organized around major world capitals and international cities, centers have also become an unraveled platform of B2B communications as well as government to business engagements. We are desirous of taking this conversation and engagement beyond this room to corporate boardrooms and political offices to help fast-track the much-needed change. We therefore implore you to help us in getting this message across. Once again, we would like to congratulate the Persons of the Year Awards and inductees into the African Leadership CEOs Hall of Fame. Success, as they say, is a journey and not a destination. Thus, the journey actually continues. On behalf of Dr. Beasley, I'd like to thank you for your presence here today, and I trust that the blame process in Africa changes. We start looking within ourselves and we move forward. Thank you very much. Sorry, just before I actually complete, I'm sorry, Rahima. I just need to introduce to you our next video, which we're going to show. Unfortunately, last minute yesterday, Senator Donzella unfortunately couldn't make the event, and the kindness of her heart has actually did a video for us to actually send it through. So we'd now like to have the opening remarks of Senator Donzella James, Senator, who's representing the Metropolitan Atlanta 55th District of Georgia. I had the opportunity to meet her when she was down in Dubai, who stands very strongly for women empowerment and stands very strongly for leadership development. And I'd now like to present to you the video by Senator Donzella James.
That while you're doing this event, things might go wrong. And I said, of course, Mama, it's a live event. She said, live? I said, well, the way we do things these days is that we share things live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. In fact, those in the room should follow us on Twitter, at ALMPOYI, on Instagram, at ALMPOY. Why are you sharing it on Instagram? Is the kind of things that you're doing hashtags, she says? No, Mama, they're not hashtags. They're real news. It's the kind of news we should actually be interacting with every day. How are you going to convince me? She said. I said, well, Mama, we've changed the program a little bit this time. And on the program this time, we're talking about newsmakers. We're talking about events that are happening in the world right now that actually influence and impact us. What kind of events? Well, we're going to be focusing on Nigeria. Nigeria? Well, I'm going to be bringing up Kingsley Okeke-Soti, and he's going to have with us Lieutenant General Yusuf Barati, Chief Army Staff of Nigeria. She laughed. She said, impossible. Aren't they having elections tomorrow?
As well as the great city of Atlanta, Georgia.
Please, a round of applause for Rahama. She's been doing an amazing job. Please, a round of applause for her again. I'm back. You will see more of me today, so please get used to it. Very quickly, like she said, elections in Nigeria tomorrow, a very big issue. The world is watching Nigeria to get it right, and we will get it right. And some people might ask, why would we have the military in a business setting? Like I said earlier, security is a precursor to sustainable investment anywhere in the world. So we felt it was important that the largest economy, that the misconceptions we've had about security in the country, what has been happening, how we've been trying to combat terrorism and all that, that we have the people in the room to tell us what is happening in the country. And there's no other person who would have represented the Chief of Army Staff than his Chief of Civil Military Relations, who of course has a grasp of most of the things happening in Nigeria. So before we even get to that interview, we just watch a very short video to give you, heads up into what we're going to be discussing this evening. Please take a look. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome Major General U.S. Mohammed, the Chief of Civil Military Relations, Nigerian Army, to answer some tough questions. We are going to be having now, like I told him earlier, he's not on a hot seat. I can't put him on a hot seat. He's used to battle, the war front. But today, I'm doing the asking, and he'll be doing the answering. But very quickly, Boko Haram in Nigeria's northeast, IPOB in the southwest. Now, mellowed down, so to speak. And of course, other issues, the farmers, heather clashes, and all that. The world is asking, what is happening in Nigeria? We've had a recent report where some international organizations were blaming the Nigerian army for a lot of human rights abuses. What is the position on ground?
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe just as a reminder, I'm Major General U.S. Mohammed, the Chief of Civil Military Affairs, Nigerian Army Headquarters, and I'm here to represent the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General T.Y. Buratai, who is unable to be here because of other pressing national assignments. So let me just quickly respond to your question by saying that the Nigerian Army has made a lot of progress in terms of the fight against insurgency, that's domestic terrorism and global terrorism, which is affecting most other countries and Africa and the world at large. The Nigerian Army, yes, is faced with so many security threats. As you said, the Boko Haram terrorism in the northeast, the IPOB issue in the southeast, the farmers' herdsmen clashes in the northwest, the threats of militancy and the oil theft in the south-south. The Nigerian Army definitely has done a lot, and this has been possible through the purposeful leadership being undertaken by the Chief of Army Staff. He has come up with a lot of innovation. He has come up with a lot of ideas, and especially I know what interests most individuals now is about the Boko Haram issue in the northeast. So maybe I'll just take time to dwell on that for a while. As you all know, before 2015, before the current Chief of Army Staff came on board, there were a lot of challenges as regards the Boko Haram issue. And Boko Haram was virtually controlling some territories in Nigeria, and they also declared a caliphate. So, but with the coming of the Chief of Army Staff, even without any new equipment or any new changes, but just due to the purposeful leadership being propagated by him, he brought in a lot of ideas. He was able to tinker with the commanders in the field. He led by example, and he was able to turn around the situation. And right now, I can tell you that the Boko Haram issue, yes, even though they are still there, a lot of progress has been made, and they no longer hold any territory in northeastern Nigeria. Once in a while, we still get one or two attacks or one or two issues that might make it seem as if they are still very active. But the fact is that they are still there, but as much as possible, their reach and activities has been diminished to a very, very minimal level. For those of you who are from Nigeria or who have visited Nigeria will know that the perception as regards insecurity before 2015 was quite different to now, because as at that time, even in the capital Abuja, we had almost daily bomb attacks, Kaduna, several other places, but right now the activity has been confined to just a few states, that is Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa. And even Yobe and Adamawa has now been curtailed, but their major presence is still around northern Borno general area. So to a large extent, the activity has actually been curtailed. But to answer your question directly, yes, there are a lot of security threats, but I can tell you that the security environment in Nigeria is improving. And of course, without security, you can't do anything. No development can take place. And of course, businesses and those who are interested in doing business will not come. So, but to a very large extent, I can tell you that the situation has been stabilized and it has been normalized, even though, as you alluded, we have issues of certain international non-governmental organizations and certain human rights groups accusing the Nigerian Army of several human rights abuses or certain inactions and actions that may have portrayed us as not respecting human rights. But I can tell you to a very large extent that the Chief of Army Staff, having come on board, he has placed a very high premium on respect for human rights, and they're propagating civil-military relations, which I currently head. And I know the sort of effort we've been doing to ensure that we improve on civil-military relations without necessarily going into details. But I can tell you that we hold a lot of sensitization campaigns. We have established a human rights desk. We ensure that when we go out for internal security operations, we ensure that each soldier complies with the code of conduct for internal security operations. We have our rules of engagement, which is very, very, should I say, liberal. And it places a high premium on exercising so much restraint that only when a soldier feels he's threatened before you can even resort to using your arms. So you can verify this. Then also we have undertaken a lot of quick impact projects with the community, especially in areas of medical outreach, provision of boreholes and water, construction of roads. That is just to say a little about aspects of civil military affairs, which is my area. So to a very large extent, I can see the Nigerian Army has made a lot of progress, and Nigeria is ripe and it's secure, and to a very large extent is at least conducive for business. Thank you so much.
All right. Very quickly, I have a report with me here, a 2017 report that says that Nigeria ranks, 149 out of 163 in the Global Peace Index. Now, of course, we know because of the issues that you've just mentioned. It is a major problem for anyone who is coming to to invest in a country. What specific measures, from all the things you've mentioned, what specific measures can you say is in place to ensure the safety and security of investment in Nigeria? Having in mind that, anybody, the news in the US and the UK is that Boko Haram is on the streets of Abuja, Lagos. But it might not be the case on ground. It is not the case on ground. But what are some of the measures they put in place to ensure that you consistently, because the war is in a continuum, it's not, it's a sustained battle?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Let me just quickly state here that the primary responsibility of the Nigerian Army is to deter external aggression and, as much as possible, fight external threats to the nation's security. We also have a responsibility as enshrined in our constitution to provide aid to civil authority. So what you are saying mainly has to do with the organs of security, like the police, the civil defense, the Department of State Services, to provide internal security. That's to provide security for citizens and investment within the country. That is not to say that the Nigerian Army is not involved. We come in to provide aid to civil authority when called upon. So to a very large extent, we are doing that right now, but that's not our primary responsibility. I can tell you that the Nigerian Army presently is engaged in so many internal security operations in the country just to secure this investment. For instance, we are engaged in Operation Delta Safe in the South-South to secure oil facilities, pipelines, and investments. We are engaged in Operation Safe Haven in the Central Region, that's just to provide a safe and secure environment for individuals. Also, we are engaged in Operation Mesa. Operation Mesa is an internal security operation to provide security for certain aspects within the states where they so required in support of the civil police. So as much as possible, our footprints are almost everywhere, which is not supposed to be the case. It's our secondary responsibility. But be that as it may, I will say that we have in place several measures in conjunction with the constituted authority and the agency primarily responsible for undertaking that task, to ensure that we support them as much as possible. Even the upcoming elections tomorrow, yes, the Nigerian Army is not involved, but the Chief of Army Staff, with whom I've worked with as his Chief of Staff, always told me this, that look, if we are not proactive and we don't act proactively, the tendency is that when things get bad, the army, everybody dumps the whole stuff on the foot of the army to resolve. So as much as possible, before it gets to that stage, we come out and we are proactive, so that before it gets to the level whereby they call upon the army and a lot of damage has been done, we come out quickly to support the civil police and other security agencies to ensure that we bring that situation back to normalcy. Thank you so much.
All right. Before I open to, if we have questions, please just get ready. But very, very quickly, you mentioned something, and it was deliberate. You said, the Nigerian Army is much more concerned about external aggression, which of course is your constituted authority and what you've been mandated to do. But Nigeria will be going into elections tomorrow. We know that the Nigerian Army would play a key role in from the readings we've had, from the reports we've seen. What is the level of involvement of the Nigerian Army in Nigeria's election?
Okay, thank you so much for that very good question. The fact is that, yes, the Nigerian Army, Nigeria is going into elections, beginning with the presidential elections tomorrow, and we have the next round of elections on 9th of March. The fact is that Nigerian Army is not directly involved. As I earlier said, the agency primarily responsible for providing electoral security is the Nigeria Police, in conjunction with other security agencies. But of course, as I said, the Nigerian Army will only be there in a supporting role. But I will tell you this. Right now, all army formations are on standby to ensure that they support the police when called upon. And we are maintaining standby troops in every location to ensure that if any situation arises, before it gets to a level whereby it's pervasive and it's widespread, we nip it in the bud. And as much as possible, even when these troops are deployed, they are not visible So tomorrow, I'm sure by the time you look at your screens and cameras and other pictures you see, you will not necessarily see the army on the streets. We will be somewhere, maybe within the barracks, in a location close to the action spot, if so required. And the areas where I can tell you we are directly involved is in areas where we believe there are security challenges. For instance, in Rivers and other states where there is a history of electoral violence. So you will see soldiers providing security with the police at CBN building, where you have the electoral materials being kept, at the at the INEC office, that's Independent Electoral Commission's office, so that to deter any untoward situation that could undermine the elections in some of those areas. But I can tell you a very quick answer to your question is we are not directly involved, but indirectly we'll be involved. As I said, we don't want a situation whereby it gets so bad and the whole stuff is dumped at our footsteps, because anytime any problem comes up and it gets out of hand, the last bus stop is the army, and they just dump the whole thing for us, and we'll have to bear the brunt and bring it back to normalcy. Thank you so much.
All right, one last question from me. I don't know, is there any question from the crowd? Is there anybody who wants to ask any question? If not, one last question from me is, sometime last year, we had, we had some engagements, more like some kind of a session with the chief of, and one key thing we took away from that, meeting with him was priority welfare, welfare of the men, of the Nigerian army is a key priority for him. But lately, we've been seeing cases of people at the, at the battlefront, revolting and complaining, the necessary tools, equipment for fights, their welfare is not being catered for. What is the true position on the ground, and what has led to that development?
Okay, thank you so much, KK, and let me just respond to it this way. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General T.Y. Buratai, as much as I know, I've worked with him very closely. He's a welfarist to the core, in the sense that he is very concerned about the welfare of troops and even the equipment with which troops fight with in the battlefield. I can tell you that as much as possible, yes, there may be challenges once in a while with maybe late payment of allowances, maybe provision of welfare in terms of food and other logistics items. But these are not deliberate when they occur. I can tell you that there could be challenges, but they are not deliberate. As much as possible, the Chief of Army Staff ensures that troops' allowances are paid as at when due. And even sometimes when they are not even paid from government, they borrow from other subheads to ensure that they are paid. That I can tell you because I've worked closely with him as Chief of Staff. Secondly, when it gets to aspects of welfare in the field, like feeding and other logistics, some of these things fall under what I call command responsibility. There could be individual differences in certain locations. So, of course, you cannot expect to all cook from one giant pot and serve it around everybody. There could be variations from one location to the next. So, I can tell you that as much as possible, the Chief of Army Staff is concerned about welfare. He's concerned about payment of allowances. And he's also concerned about even medical care when troops get injured. I can tell you that as much as possible, when troops get injured, when they are injured, if the issue cannot be handled within the country, they are flown abroad. We've had instances, mostly I think our favorite destination is India and Egypt. As much as possible, I know we've taken a very large percentage of those that cannot be handled, their cases to India and Egypt for further medical attention. Also, I can tell you that when it gets to aspects of equipment, which you alluded to, whether you like it or not, the fact is that the Boko Haram terrorists, they are not more equipped than the Nigerian army. That is just the truth. We have instances whereby troops come out and say they are not as equipped as the Boko Haram. That is not true. It's also part of the, should I say, negative propaganda you see. But the fact is that they are not more equipped than us. We are better equipped, and we are better resourced, we are better trained, and I believe we are better motivated than the Boko Haram terrorists themselves. Sometimes you have challenges where troops have issues, or they don't want to fight, or they have challenges, so they just easily take to social media and make up such stories. And a lot of those videos you see are, shall I say, repackaged and recirculated, and a lot of falsehood there is a lot of falsehood contained in some of those videos. That's just the truth. At least the media man who used to be our spokesman, General Sani Kukasheka Osman, is in the audience. He has been in the forefront of countering many of these allegations, so he can bear me out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, well, you've heard it from the general himself. Nigeria is safe and secure. You're welcome to do business in Nigeria. Who else better to provide the answers to this question, if not the men at the war front themselves? So, ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause for Major General as he takes his seat.
The dress. Mama says to Nigeria, good luck on your elections tomorrow. And she asked me to pass on the message, please tell us when they've brought back the girl. The reality is that in the conversations that we sometimes have uncomfortable conversations. In the conversations that we also have conversations about great possibilities. So Mama said to me, so what are these other conversations that you plan on having? And of course I got excited, right? Because I'm an entrepreneur. And when on the passage I saw that, we're going to be talking about human development and entrepreneurship, I thought to myself, goodness, we're sitting on a continent of 1.28 billion people nearly. And it is said, statistics show that nearly 40% of this continent's population is youth. We are sitting on massive resources that the rest of the world always comes to extract and beneficiate, and we buy back. What is the real opportunity out there that we're not taking advantage of? How are we as Africans claiming our space on the global stage? Mama said to me, child, you're going to have all these conversations in one night. I thought, no, Mama, that's not what's going to happen. We're going to have a great panel discussion. And that panel discussion is going to be hosted by a champion of South Africa, a presenter and somebody well known to the stage of media, a gentleman who takes hard questions and listens carefully and asks probing questions about the future. And that gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, is no other than Mr. Ashraf Garda.
Okay, just checking if this is working.
Well, you've been talking about Mama the whole evening. The only thing I remember from that movie called Chicago was, you be good to Mama. Everybody knows it, Mama will be good to you. So there's a lesson to learn out of that, right? Let me do this. I'm going to call on, and probably Mama told me, there's 5 people who are going to talk about entrepreneurship. And I said, well, how am I going to sort this out? Because we don't have enough time, since there's 5 different people. And your friend Mama said, no problem, get them all up on the stage in one go and have a 30-minute or so panel discussion. So we'll do what Mama said we'll do. Let me do this. I'm going to call on the people, and I'd appreciate you give them the best applause you can in advance, and then later on as well. First up, Rosemary Chambe Jairo, who's the Deputy High Commissioner of Tanzania. And Rahima, you will appreciate the connection, of course. And good seeing you once again. I remember you giving a talk a few months ago, and you impressed me greatly. You can come up here, please. Oh. No, maybe let's take one of these chairs. Okay, the next of the panelists is Zafar Aziz Osmani. He's the CEO of Accelerate Private Limited. Put your hands together for Zafar. And let's continue. The next of the panelists is Mukwandi Chibesakunda, who's the CEO of the National Savings and Credit Bank from Zambia. It's known as NatSave. Those from Zambia would be well aware of that. Thank you. I was going to say contestant number 4. No, just panelist number 4. Oliver W. Clark Jr., the CEO of Rovia Gate Technology from Monrovia in Liberia. Oliver? Okay. All right, and the last of the panelists is Mohammed Jabbar, who's from Morocco, the District General for Expert Solutions for SAP. I hope I got that right. Right? Yeah? Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, let me just tell you what the plan is. So we should be chatting for 30 minutes, okay? Unless Rahima says we've got time for questions, I think we're going to run out of time, so unlikely from the audience. But if there's a change, you'll let me know, right? The plan is that I'll speak to the 5 of them on a very important issue, but they're not going to have long-winded speeches. I'm not going to allow that, okay? We'll allow them a minute each to start with. The rest of it, as they say, we'll just go with the flow, okay? So the plan is we'll engage you, and then based upon what you say, if I want to pick up certain things with certain individuals, we'll just go there. Having been a host from a radio and a TV perspective, I want to run it along those lines. So the idea of long-winded academic answers, no, no, no. Because in an audience like this, primarily you want to be entertained first, and then hopefully informed as well at the same time, okay? So thank you for your cooperation, right? So I've already introduced the people. I'm not going to do that again. Rahima, please check time with me as well, so I know where we are. Now, the key issue here, it was touched on earlier on. We've got Africa, and I think the mayor of Johannesburg made the point about if Johannesburg works, South Africa works. If South Africa works, there's a good chance Africa works. And one can say the complete opposite of that if things don't work out, okay? Then we have to ask ourselves this key question. Well, if we want Africa to work, and Hava made the point about no excuses and that naughty table, then how is Africa going to work? What are we going to do? What are the nuts and bolts about getting this continent to make some magic? Because with respect, for example, I love the game of soccer. I'm absolutely crazy about football. But we cannot say, when it comes to Africa's Big Five, and we've got a guest from Liberia, so we can't say George Weah is part of Africa's Big Five, or Mohamed Salah. If we go back all those years ago from Cameroon and what they did with Roger Milla, we can't say that's our finest exports. We have to find something more profound, more solid, more impactful. And that brings us to the topic, which is the issue of human development and entrepreneurship. Human development, or human skills development of individuals, and entrepreneurship. And is that a catalyst for Africa's economic growth? So the question you need to be asking yourself as well, right? Is that a catalyst between the connection of human beings and how we develop personally and entrepreneurship? Can that be the catalyst for the type of economic growth our continent so desperately needs? So we'll get answers from you, and you can tweet as well. Rahima dashed out those Twitter handles and hashtags. I'd love it, actually, if all of you can make the connection, add your own comments, argue and disagree with the guests as well. And the best way to do that is just give your views on Twitter right away, as and when it's tense. Okay, let's then get through. So what I'll do with each one of the panelists, and I've introduced you already, so we're not going to do that again. We're starting with Rosemary, just 1 minute maximum in answer to that question about human development, connecting to entrepreneurship, and can that together be the catalyst for Africa's growth? Or maybe you could also answer this, is there a rather stupid question? Because, like, isn't it the most obvious thing we'd expect? If not that, then what? Go ahead. Let me do that. Okay, what's that? May I just...
Thank you very much. When I got this question, I looked at what does economic growth entail? And the answer to me came, it is increase of production of goods and services, which results in creating employment and purchasing power grows. So for me, economic growth without human development and entrepreneurship is quite a difficult achievement to get. So for me, it's a big yes. But I went further. How does this happen altogether? All our countries are run by governments, so-called democratic government. Most of African countries go to elections and so on, so we are democratic. And we need to put the framework, the governments need to put the frameworks, the legislations, the policies which are conducive for the growth of human development and also entrepreneurship. For example, Africa is the richest continent on earth with endowments, minerals. I look at Tanzania, for example. We have a lot of minerals, from gemstones to diamonds to gold and all other metals. You find them in Tanzania. But we've had policies and legislation which did not benefit the Tanzanians themselves. So last year, 2017, the government of Tanzania and the parliament reformed the legislation, the mining legislation and the sovereign wealth legislation, whereby there was a component of local content. You know, the extraction of the mining is done by superpowers. In Tanzania, it's not different, like in South Africa and any other African country where there are minerals, you see a lot of Western powers coming in. And the legislation was not conducive for Africa, for Africans, for Tanzanians.
Can I just pause there, because I'll come back to you on that as well, right? So legislation, an important point. On the same thing, just for a minute to answer that question, Zafar.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. Very interesting question. I'd look at this very theme in a slightly different perspective. We're saying that human capital development and entrepreneurship is a catalyst for. And I'm saying, I'll go a little stronger on it. It's not a catalyst, it's a must. It is the only way for development. And the good things for working for Africa, as we discussed earlier, we have a young population. So 70% or 80% of people are around less than 30 years of age. That's a huge human capital we're talking about. That's a huge potential resource we're talking about. And what I understand is that, like most of the emerging economies, most African businesses are state-owned enterprises. They are owned by the governments. And an important factor here will be the work culture that is there for human capital development. And the state-owned enterprises and the government service itself does not encourage human capital development. It provides an environment of comfort where there is not so much of need for learning. People are complacent. You get into the service, you stay there, and there is not much of a pressure to really learn and grow. So the learning type is a big gap. And that is where human capital development will require, to leverage from all mechanism, all platforms of learning. There has to be a coherent human learning, human resource learning and development strategy, because that is the only factor that will take us to the next. And we're supported today in this learning transformation by two global phenomena factors. One of them is the technological breakthrough, the automation. It is happening, it's happening so fast that we don't even realize how we have changed in the last 5 years. Our technology leveraging and utilization has increased. You know, all the digital banking and transfer of money, everything is happening very fast. And the second thing is the disruption, which is changing the business models now. The disruption, which is just a couple of examples, like Uber, we see, you don't have to own a car to be one of the largest motor vehicles. Airbnb, you don't have to own a single property, but be the world's largest property provider. Now, Africa, we have the resources, we have the human capital. So they need to be trained into the capability of utilizing and leveraging this technological opportunities that are coming.
All right, can we just pause on that for a moment? We'll certainly come back. It's important points made there. Mukwandi, your thoughts? Yeah?
I actually have a single point. Mindsets. We have a mindset that just does not encourage entrepreneurship. And I'll give a specific example. In Zambia, our education system does not encourage anyone to be an entrepreneur. We're all schooled to work for somebody, and that has to change. And that is the same thing in the rest of Africa. A lot of that is historical to do with socialism, and it's something that has to change. So our education system has to align to entrepreneurship, and we have then a creation of a culture that allows for human development through that process.
Okay, short answer, but very profound. The point made. Thank you. Oliver, go for it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. From my perspective, I will throw a little bit of numbers. I'm a numbers person. 60% of the continent is about 19 to 25 years old, 25 years and under. The median age is 19 years old. The continent has about 30% of the world mineral resources deposited here. We have one of the highest unemployment rate on the face of the earth, double digits across the continent. In the low areas, it's about 10%. In the high areas, up to about 70%. We have some other countries where we call the locust areas due to civil unrest, where their population, we have a huge set of young people that have never been through formal schooling. So human capacity development is very key in helping the growth of our economy. And to get that accomplished, we have to invest in TVET programs, technical vocational training programs. That to me is the shortest path to entrepreneurship, because if you graduate from the TVET program, you can more easily start your own business. Maybe you might be someone repairing computers, you might be someone repairing shoes, but that's the quickest path to entrepreneurship. And just like you said, it's a mindset issue. We have to start teaching wealth creation and wealth building within our schools from a very early onset up to the very formal level. If we start doing that early on, we will create a mindset that we can create our own business. And just to add a little more point, government has to create an environment to help businesses grow. And sometimes, I would say this to our government officials, you have to be, for lack of a better word, you have to be subjective in protecting local businesses. That is, for local content to succeed, you have to protect creativity, you have to protect ingenuity, you have to sometimes say, no, this only will go to a South African company. Regardless of whatever the multinational may be, we are going to keep this portion of our business only for South African company. Only by protecting local businesses can we expand and grow our economic base.
Okay, got that. And Mohammed Jabbar?
Thank you very much. First of all, I need to present again that the world now is living an era of disruption. And disruption or disruptive new ways of doing everything in the daily life reward the disruptor first. So Africa needs to be one of the disruptors. Africa needs to start this new life we are looking for, to build new technologies, to build innovation, to start innovation from the African land. And this can be facilitated by education. Of course, we are talking about a continent that is going to be the most and the biggest continent in the world, a huge market, a huge capacity, a huge human resource capital. This is an opportunity for Africa. I'm quite sure if we miss this time, we are done. We have to get this wave. We have to be disruptive. We have to motivate innovation, to push innovation, and to accept that new generation has a new way of thinking, new way of doing, a new way of operating, new way of living. Then this is rich. This is a wheel that we need to take part of.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm sure there are many disruptors here in the room, and for those that are not come from business or marketing speak, disrupting is a very, very positive word with positive connotations as opposed to negative connotations. I mean, just as an aside, I had a chat just a few days ago with Aisha Pandor, who's the daughter of South Africa's Minister of Higher Education, Naledi Pandor, and her organization, Sweep South, is a massive disruptor in terms of domestic workers. And now I understand the plan is now to move it from South Africa throughout the African continent. So the point I want to bring up, therefore, now go back to the point that you made about mindset, right? Because I think it's particularly important, right? So if the mindset has been that we have been inspired by socialist societies and therefore a dependence, and Mayor of Joburg, Herman Mashaba, has got a lot to say about it because he made it very clear, I'm a capitalist. It's a big word in South Africa, socialism, capitalism, dirty words both ways, depends which way you take it, right? Besides the mindset change, how do we actually also put into people's minds the need to be absolutely entrepreneurial? So mindset change in terms of, yes, they mustn't just get a secure job, but then is the entrepreneur to start the business so that you're not unemployed, or do you start the business because you actually want to represent growth in your country? There's a very big difference there.
Absolutely, and it won't just happen overnight. And at the end of the day, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. However, if everyone's given an opportunity to identify the skills, and earlier today we had the conversation about being purposeful, are people allowed to find that purpose? And on the basis of that, then building on it and making sure that they are successful in that. That's what we need to do. We need to be the catalyst to make that happen. And whether you view it as capitalism or socialism, whatever ideology you go with, at the end of the day, we have a youth issue in Africa that has to be addressed. We can either make it into a dividend or a crisis, because we will end up with a crisis of unemployment if we don't address this issue today. Absolutely. And so...
how much time do we have? When I say not tonight, how much time do we have? Because you made the point, Mohammed, about Africa, if we don't succeed now, we've got huge problems. So, and feel free if you want to contribute, just lift your hands up and we'll get there. Talk to me about that. How much time do we have on our side?
As we are
young population, right? Young population, but using mobile, but also at the same time, Africa largely disconnected from a power supply point of view. It's a major disadvantage. We've had load shedding in our country last week. We know what it is like. Your thoughts?
So as we are talking about disruption, the disruption is something that happens suddenly. That's why it disrupts the way of doing anything. And the change for Africa needs to happen now. There is no tomorrow. Tomorrow is now. We are living in the future. We did not believe in today, yesterday. Everything changes quite rapidly. Technologies emerges and are created between day and night, and Africa needs to catch up its chance right now. Doing business, doing work has also already been disrupted. Work will never be the same as it was before.
We need to accelerate. I have to tell you this, when Rosemary Chambe Jairo from Tanzania spoke at a previous function that I attended, the one thing she said that stood out for me was this, and this is relevant to all of you, especially to women. We must stop having Tupperware parties. Nothing wrong with Tupperware, by the way. You can make a fortune out of it. Some people have done that. But we need to have women coming together and have entrepreneurial parties. It has stuck with me to the point I've never forgotten. You made a mark. My question to you as a Tanzanian who loves South Africa and the rest of Africa, how do we accelerate that? Because that's a mindset change we speak about. To say, it's not just for fun stuff. We need to make this thing happen. You want to go first?
No,
yeah.
I just wanted to, before we come to, because that's one segment, it's a very important point that we don't have time. It's like today is the day. And the big question before all of us is the question of mindset change. Who has the ownership for this in our countries, in Africa? Is it the government, political leadership? Is it the corporate leadership? Or is it the institutions or academia? So this is a very important thing. We don't have time. And that ownership has to come from somewhere. So it's important to
So question, who has the ownership, in your opinion?
In my own way, what I have seen is a combination. I can just quote one example from Pakistan, where we, to create this mindset, which was important because of eating the economy like a plague, and some of 5 of our largest banks were state-owned. So we decided to privatize them. I had the fortune of being associated with complete transformation of the largest bank, which had 31,000 employees, 26 countries, global operation. And the mindset was that classical legacy, indifferent, customer indifference and everything. I can't go into detail. But that was the classical public sector bank where there was no customer service, where we were making huge losses. And there was a tremendous transition. A lot of lessons were learned, how to change the mindset of the people. You have legacy people, you have new people, and right now it is the leadership, unfortunately, cherishing on the learnings from past. People who are in the decision-making positions are in the age 40s, 50s, or a bit later. Their learnings are from past, and this is a totally different world. Human civilization has not seen this, and so there has to be a lot of unlearning to be done. That was my point for the leadership.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's an important phrase: learning at faster than the speed of change, but unlearning faster.
Yeah, and give them the sense of security, because unlearning makes us insecure. The moment you question Mr. Uthmani, I say I have 40 years of experience. You say that's irrelevant now today. It's a disruptive word. And then I go into shell. No, I have to defend them.
Well, absolutely. Rosemary, give me your thoughts. And so the mindset change, and I speak about the Tupperware story and entrepreneurship, but so who, maybe pick up on that point, who owns the mindset?
The mindset is owned by an individual. So it's something which has to come from you. But also the government, the corporates, we all have to work holistically so that we can enable the mind changing of in schools, in education, in business, in social life. Instead of looking at soap operas, those people have already made it. I always tell my children, go to school and read. These soap opera people have already made it. So those people have made it. They should not be our priority. We should change our minds in such a way that we should focus on entrepreneurship. We should focus on building the economy, because the economy cannot be built by the government itself. And that's why there's public-private partnerships which is going on with governments. That's the way we are going. We are doing things these days. But the government has a main responsibility of ensuring that legislations, policies are all in place and are conducive for everybody to take part in economic growth.
And your thought, in your experience in South Africa, in Tanzania and other countries, do governments have policies that not just say entrepreneurship is good, but they absolutely encourage it, they enable it, or in fact, are they doing otherwise?
Let me take an example of Tanzania. At the moment, since we've got the 5th president of the United Republic of Tanzania, so it's the 5th phase of Tanzania, and his key word is industrialization. Industrialization in such a way that Tanzania has 70% employed in the agriculture sector, but it's still crude, and there are no processing industries. Therefore, with entrepreneurship, when people come together as self-employed in the area of agriculture, which is mechanized, coping in the disruptive era, and also having to sell their goods processed, it's a way where the economic growth is going to count more figure for development of the country.
Okay, there's so much more to come. Oliver, you may want to just come in.
Yeah, I was just trying to add on a little bit of the what she mentioned about changing the mindset. I think it's the partnership between the entrepreneur and the government. From my own perspective, I would say this has to do a little more of positive propaganda in terms of the government, in terms of quote-unquote glorifying business people. More of the young people want to be athletes because those are who they can relate to. So if you glorify entrepreneurs, like, take a look at this person. He came from here and came here just by doing business. So if they see that successful person as a role model that they can relate to, it helps change the mindset more than just going to the classroom and say you have to change your mindset. There has to be the point of reference that this person came from nowhere, but by doing business, he's here. So that positive propaganda has to come from the government and the business environment. The government create the environment, but then the business community have to be successful. They have to show someone that the government can put out there as a positive propaganda, as a role model for the young people, that this person came from nowhere, but he became successful just by doing business.
But does entrepreneurship differ in environments that are capitalist environments, or environments that are socialist, and some that has a mixture of both? I mean, any thoughts on that? Or if anybody else has, you come from banking, you want to just comment? Anybody else? Mohammed?
Yeah, I think the initiatives need to come from people, from persons. If we wait for the government to set up everything for us, then we will fail in what Hawa just mentioned, that we will complain about something else. Let's start by ourselves. Everybody, especially the leaders, need to start to be themselves disruptive in the way they work, in the way they innovate, in the way they invest, in the way they create the economy. And just don't wait for others to start. Let's start ourselves. And it pays off.
Okay, I want to pick up, we've got about 5 minutes to go, unfortunately. I wish there was more. I want to pick up on the issue of youth, young people in Africa, and we've already said so, right? But so who do these young people in Africa learn from if their parents are largely colonized, so the mindset is one of a colonial master on the one end, and then replaced by a political head who, by and large, and statistically it's proven they still rely heavily on the West and Europe. How do these children garner confidence when, in fact, their entire existence is one of dependence? You may want to pick up on it.
Thank you. Actually, I think for a young generation to look up to their parents to tell them or to guide them, that's not going to be very successful, because they have not themselves, not the parents themselves have, you talk about the socialist or the capitalist.
Can I just repeat that? Because you may want to tweet that. For a young person to look up to their parents to guide them, that's not going to be very successful. That's as far as business goes, not other things in life. Carry on.
Yeah, there are two things. One is learning the value system. That is only coming from the parents and home. Second thing is learning about what my future career and opportunities of entrepreneurship. I see very little opportunity because the expertise is not there. The generation is a different generation. Even even if you look 20 years back and today, the world is so different. 5 years back and today, so the learning has to come, and this learning is going to come now from the global learning platform, which is through the connectivity, which is through the internet, and lot of young entrepreneurs are coming up, not learning from their parents and home, but learning from what's happening around. Jack Ma started off with so many failures all over, and he did not learn from his parents, but he's now one of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world. He is the biggest retailer in the whole world with not a single retail outlet, just leveraging technology. So technology is coming here with such a heavy intensity, and I doubted that in my generation I have ability to provide that. I can encourage them to think and look around, but I can't tell them what the way.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, I've been on record already saying it on air that I need a young entrepreneur. I need a young mentor. I don't want to mentor someone young. I want to be mentored by someone young, and I think that's very, very important. Pick up on that point regarding. I mean, I think we already take it as a given. The technological advancement is phenomenal. You mentioned Jack Ma wanting to go through Microsoft at that stage, where in fact even it was by an older person. He disrupted the system. We can go to Facebook, go to Google, Apple. Everything was done by crazy mavericks. Yeah. So the idea is go to school, get a job, get good grades, and earn an income. Doesn't work with the top 10 or 20 companies in the world. If anything, something I heard the other day say, the best achievers in entrepreneurship, they don't get higher than a B in school. So I'm on the right side on this one. I'm just making that point. But talk to me about
They actually often don't finish school in the very first place. Actually, it's about the power of one. We're trying to look for 100, 500, thousands, millions of role models
and mentors. Just one. One as a start, because we stand on shoulders of people who went before us. Somebody started something somewhere. So if we identify in each of our countries who can be that role model, I believe that that's the start. So we look at each of the countries, identify what the strengths are, because each of the countries has different strengths, and then we identify what role model we can utilize to encourage the youth to come along and join this journey. And I think it will make a difference.
It's important. I'm going to ask all of you the same question, unless you want to just say something first. Did you want to say something? Just please add, okay? Then I'll ask you one thing and then we're going to wrap up, right?
Just to add on what my sister from Zambia has been saying, I was looking into incubators. And incubators don't have to be that sophisticated. Yeah. But according to what is available with the technology and someone who has that experience. And I think the African Leadership Magazine is giving up those mentors, is breeding those mentors for the past 7 years. So if they could be identified and given programs to run for countries or for regions or for the continent, that will be absolutely great. Thank you.
That's coming with the academia. It's doing a lot. Many universities in Pakistan have got this, incubation centers where youngsters with ideas in mind, they provide you the center, and some of them come up with unique models, and they're very successful.
But here's the quick answer to this one. Isn't that a contradiction? Isn't it contradictory to create academic incubators to find businesses that by their very nature are disruptive? That means they will rewrite the rules as they exist on a daily basis.
That's a great point. You know what you're saying? Our perception of academia is that they download knowledge. And the new thing that some of the good universities are doing, they are not downloading knowledge, they are creating a new environment where innovation and creativity is nurtured. So they encourage you to think differently, they encourage you to find new solutions. So the key factors of success are creativity and innovation. With the support of technology, you encourage people to think differently, to get out of their classical mindset. And that is the real combination. So universities, so good universities, what they're doing is, they're not asking them to leverage their financial skills or whatever they have. Here's the thing, you come up with something new, and the experiment is working. Some places.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to wrap up. I can mention a few names from a Nigerian perspective. Aliko Dangote, clearly a big name in that country. And then the rest in South Africa, Herman Mashaba, the mayor now of Johannesburg, self-made millionaire, maybe billionaire, you can have the debate with me just now. Patrice Motsepe, we know, and Adrian Gores, who's formed Discovery. Those are legendary. The point is, to all of us, do we celebrate our entrepreneurs on the continent the way we celebrate our sportsmen, and I'm saying that softly, and then the way we honor our politicians, and sometimes undeservedly so, the same politicians who seek refuge in other countries for medical health care. It's across the country, across the world, we know that, right? Do we honor and value our entrepreneurs in the same way? Now, just something for you to consider. I don't want an answer because there's not much time. But the one thing I'll ask each one of you, just one quick answer, we'll wrap up. People seated here, some of them are very successful. Others are contemplating getting into business. And we already make the clear distinction between human development or capital development and entrepreneurship. It's a given. It has to happen. So the question for people seated here is, if they're considering starting a business, should they start small or should they start big in the mindset? And hopefully all of you can answer the same question. Thank you. I think it's a very important one.
I'm a civil servant, but with an entrepreneurship mind. I think at the mind, you should start big and then start small, because the investment, be ready to lose it and don't be scared, and be ready to start again, so that you should have a big idea in your mind and also come up with a plan B. Thank you.
Good. Next one.
I'll make it very easy and simple for you. Think big, start small.
Perfect. Don't have a plan B. Someone said that as well. Not you, somebody else. Right, go ahead.
Now I'm going to wear my banker hat. It depends on how much money you have.
Because even if you're thinking as big as you want, it can only really happen if you can actually make that investment. So work with what you have.
And that's another whole debate about money, right? Go ahead.
Yes, for me, from a technological standpoint, I agree with him. Think big, start small. Facebook started from a dorm room. Microsoft from a garage. Apple from a garage. So think big, start small. For me, business is just find a problem, find a solution, monetize it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have to recall that we are talking about Africa and we are addressing a country where the majority are youngsters. So bringing all, not all, but chic people to innovate for the youngster will not work. We need to bring people from that population to innovate for themselves, because this is the market, this is Africa. And building solutions now are borderless. We are talking about the world. So even sky is not a limit anymore. Please, I'm talking now to the investors, to entrepreneurs, please have the courage to disrupt. You will get rewarded.
Absolutely. All right. You see, that's a disruptor, but go ahead. Yeah.
Just one. I just wanted to, because this is very relevant to your question, you know, when we talk of thinking big, we're not talking about a lot of investment. The new business models do not require a lot of investment, but you can think big. It's just leveraging technology. All these Ubers and everything, you don't need to have investments. So you can still think big and start using that technology.
I think that disruption is important because it does tell you in this new world of new rules. You're absolutely spot on. Technology allows you to break down barriers and boundaries of not just even finance, but physical and geographical boundaries, so that you actually can pitch an idea to think, you know, nationally, globally, well, continentally and globally, and you can do that up front if you can do that. Well, all of you, thank you for your time. I wish we could talk a whole lot more. You're giving them the applause. Can I suggest, Rahima will give you the Twitter handle as well, and that hashtag that you can engage us even just now, but over supper, try and make a plan. If I were you, I would run to these people here and badger them and get some advice, okay? So please do that. But if you add comments on social media in terms of parts you agree with and do not agree with, feel free to do that. Can I just encourage you to all just stand and with your permission, just take a quick picture if we can, because I think all the guys are here. And I'm not going to miss out on this. Let's just do that there. I think that there's a lesson in that. If you want to get on the front table, don't wait for an invitation. Make it happen, right? Can we just do that? Yeah. So that's for entrepreneurship, yeah? Okay. The last thing to all of you, and it's something as part of the movement I'm involved in called Champion South Africa that I must repeat, because it should resonate with every one of you. If you've forgotten everything else about the role of entrepreneurship in building your country and our continent, remember this here. Champion people build champion people. And champion people build champion nations. Nothing else would do that but champion people duplicating champion people into becoming a champion nation. I thank you for your time.
So by now, Mama was getting quite excited. She has actually started to really get enthusiastic about the talk. And I wanted to start talking, and Mama said, whoa, wait. Let me tell you what I'm hearing you say. You're saying that there's this organization that started an African Leadership Persons of the Year. And this notion of an African Leadership Person of the Year is about an interconnectedness of being an African. It's about this identity about being somebody who's actually linking the dots, but importantly, understanding the power in those dots. This African Leadership Person of the Year is the kind of person who understands that it's about self-leadership and leading selflessly to create a future. Am I hearing you, my child? I'm like, like, yes, yes. No, 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 no. This is not for time for you to speak, she said. I want to understand about this African Leadership Person of the Year. You're celebrating people who have stood out in the work that they do, people who have been acknowledged for the fact that they're making a difference, they're having an impact. And in doing that, you're actually linking the dots, that it's not just about the personal development of the person, it's also about that person realizing that they're part of a society. And because they're a part of the society, they're understanding not only the role that they have to play, but the fact that anything that they do will make a difference. I said to her, yes, Mama, no, 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 wait, she said. I want to understand that one of the things you've brought into this room is this understanding of safety of the people of Africa. And by understanding that once we are not safe in our spaces, it is almost impossible for people to feel safe in our places. So it is important for us to make sure that safety is key. We cannot keep having the things that we're having happening in Kenya, happening in Nigeria. We've got to come to a point where Africa and Africans are free to move around. And I thought to myself, yes, Mama, yes, Mama. She said, but wait, child. What I'm also understanding is that you've linked the human development angle of this, and you are understanding that this 1.28 billion people that is represented by 50% are women, hello. And not only that, you've also understood that 40% of this population by 2025 is actually going to be under the age of 35. So you're understanding that the reality is that the economics of the situation are dire. And unless we start to create and understand that entrepreneurship is at the heart of what is going to take this continent forward, we will not lead, but we will continue to be led. I said to her, Mama, you were listening? She said, yes, child. But tell me something. You said it was a gala dinner. When are the people going to eat? I said, oh, Mama, yes, there's food, ne? I have to announce the food. And she said, yes, Rehema, and dear child, get the protocols right. So in announcing the food, I have to say table 3 will please emerge and go to the room next door and will be served first. And after table 3, I'm going to ask for row 1 to please go through. And the reality is that there are people from different religions and they eat different types of food. So the accommodation that's been made for those who are Muslim and kosher is that there is seafood that is placed in a separate section. Please be sure to go and accommodate yourselves in that section. And for everybody else, ladies and gentlemen, dinner is served.